Alright, so it's time to take a look at another special ship. This is the Praxis 2. Now, in order to obtain this ship, you have to have over 1,000 accumulated Omega days, and then you basically get this ship for free, which I think is a very nice thing. Now, this ship should be a significant upgrade over the first generation Praxis, and overall the design of this ship remains generally speaking the same, and the Praxis has definitely one of the more interesting looking hulls in the game. I really like how this ship looks, and I'm also happy that the second version of the Praxis is more usable. Now let's take a look at the ship statistics and of course at the trait description first. Roll bonus plus 25% large turret damage, plus 25% large missile torpedo damage, plus 50% drone damage, plus 50% drone effective hit points, minus 25% resonance simulation minimum scan radius, and minus 25% narrow resonance scan radius. Advanced large laser operation bonus will give you plus 5% large laser damage, minus 10% large laser capacity on it. Advanced large missile torpedo bonus operation bonus will give you plus 5% large missile torpedo damage, plus 5% large missile torpedo explosion velocity. Advanced large railgun operation will give you plus 5% large railgun damage, plus 5% large railgun tracking speed. Advanced large cannon operation bonus will give you plus 5% large cannon damage, plus 10% large cannon accuracy fall-off. Advanced large drone operation bonus will give you plus 5% drone damage, plus 10% drone optimal range. And the advanced Battleship command bonus will give you plus 5% scan resolution and 5% flight velocity. Again, a very lengthy trait description on this ship reminds me on the Enforcer, almost the same. Overall, very interesting statistics and a very interesting roll bonus. Now, the ship has 4 drones, 5 high slots, 4 medium slots, 6 low slots, 3 combat and 3 engineering rigs, a decent cargo hold capacity, 76,000 hit points, which is a little bit lower, but still it's not that bad. Shield, armor and hull are all the same. This ship can be a shield or armor tank, depends which one you prefer, and the resistances are actually very interesting. All of them have the same values, but they are increased on the armor and a little bit increased on the hull. 9300 gigajoule is the capacitor, 888 seconds recharge time, 26.18 gigajoule per second is the recharge rate. The Praxis can lock 8 targets, 440 meter signature radius, that is actually quite large, 170 meter is the scan resolution, 22 standard strength, flight velocity 90 meters per second, which is really slow. Capital ships are faster than the Praxis, and the warp speed is 3 astronomical units per second. Overall, the Praxis is definitely not the fastest battleship around, but I think with the skill per level bonus that the speed will be improved a little bit. Okay, so how did I build this thing? Well, first thing, I want to show you something very interesting. The Praxis is technically a BlackOps battleship. It can equip support or command modules, and they improve the performance of allied ships. Now, when you actually go to the fitting window and when you try to put a command burst module into the Praxis, it actually will not work. And which means that this ship is probably going to be a BlackOps in the future. That will make the Praxis to one of the first released BlackOps battleships, and I'm very curious to see how that goes. Now, onto the build. So currently the ship has 1212.61 DPS, and that's honestly not bad. I expected a lot worse, but it's not great as well. So basically it's not bad, but it's not good in that aspect. I use large rapid missile launchers. They're overall okay. Nice flight velocity, explosion velocity and explosion radius are okay. Flight time 7.8 seconds, 36.89 km is the missile range, which honestly is not that bad on paper. I have dual webs, one scrambler, one large Nosferatu. That is basically the build that I usually go, and I use large drones because this ship has a bonus on large drones, but you can use medium and small drones as well. The low slots have one afterburner, dual adaptives, one capacitor battery, and dual large shield boosters. Now usually I build my ships to be tanking. I personally prefer tank builds over full-on DPS builds. There are some ships that I use with only a DPS build, and that means the rigs on the Praxis will be focused on maximum possible resistance and maximum possible shield booster performance. Now 56% resistance over on all damage types, and the rigs consist of 3 4P combat integration modules. 2 of them are focused on resistance and shield booster performance. Basically, I have reduced the shield booster capacitor need, and I have improved the shield booster boost amount per cycle. And the third rig in the middle is full on resistance, basically kinetic, thermal, explosive, and EM, so that the resistance values are balanced out. And honestly, I really like how this looks on paper. Should be really solid. Now in the engineering rigs I have capacitor control circuits, but you can also change that into any other rigs that you like. I went for the maximum possible capacitor volume in order to sustain the boosters for as long as possible, and of course the other stats are okay. Overall, the Praxis on paper it doesn't look that bad, but at the same time it's really nothing impressive. So far the values and the numbers seem to be comparable to the other tier 9, tier 10 battleships, and I guess that will prevent this ship from being really overpowered. One unique aspect is the resistance that you have. They're balanced out, so whatever weapon is shooting at you, it will be doing around the same amount of damage, so you will not have any resistance holes on the shield or armor or hull, and I guess that's a very nice thing that this ship has. The speed, 157.50 meters per second, is, you know, not that bad, but at the same time not great. It's still faster than a Battlegorn, and that is actually really funny. Now let's take a look at the active performance, at the active resistance and speed. The DPS will remain the same, 1212.61, and that's okay. I'm not complaining about that much. 81% resistance on all damage types, 250,000 hit points, which is again not bad. Balanced out resistance, 4 minutes and 49 seconds is the capacitor runtime. Speed is 470.27 meters per second, and again that's not bad. Definitely faster than the Battlegorn. The Battlegorn goes around 369 meters per second, so yes, the Battlegorn remains the slowest battleship in the game, and I guess that's a balancing factor for that battleship.
Docking
Let
request
me show you some other builds that I also have in mind. You can do something like this with dual adaptives and one reactive. Should be really good against lasers and against railguns, but it can also improve the resistance against other weapons. Now I have also dual Nosferatus, and the capacitor is a lot more stable now. Let's take a look at the active stats. 269,000 hit points, 83% resistance, so I got plus 2% with the reactive. Cold, but that will go up once the ship starts taking damage. 7 minutes and 29 seconds is the capacitor runtime, which is a nice improvement over the 4 minutes and 49 seconds that we had with the
docking request.
You can also swap the reactive with a damage control. This will give you a 8.64% passive resistance bonus on basically shield, armor, and hull. And of course we have the panic button, which will increase the resistance quite a bit. 60% hold. Again, all the types are balanced out, no holes. With the adaptives, the resistance will be around 83%, I would guess. 83%, okay. And 273,000 hit points. Once the damage control is active, the values go to 94%, and this will last for 13 seconds. Basically enough to warp out, jump out, or stuff, or situations similar to that.
Docking
Okay,
request
let me show you another build. Now, I personally don't like to use a build like this. I prefer to have a propulsion module, but a build like this will ensure maximum possible resistance, and now the capacitor is stable at 44-45%. So I should get some pretty good values. 294,000 hit points, 84% resistance. Now let me take a look at the damage control active values. 95%, again, that's really nice. If you go full on tank in the low slots, you can get that up to 97-98%, but 95-94 is already good enough. Now you can also do a build like this, dual Nosferatus and the capacitor battery, and now the capacitor lasts 16 minutes and 18 seconds, which honestly is pretty solid so far. The tank should be overall pretty decent and should last for a very long time. Against small ships you can use a large neutralizer. Now the capacitor will last 3 minutes and 16 seconds. Basically use the neutralizer only when there's a small ship engaging your ship. In low sec, neutralizers, webs, and scramblers are excellent defense weapons. Neutralizers do a very quick job of the tackle frigate capacitor, and you can actually improve the stats of your modules using the general units on the implants. You can basically have 46-50 kilometers range on the neutralizers. You can have higher neutralizer efficiency and strength and things like that. And for the implants, it really depends on what weapon system are you going to use. Now, if I use missiles, I will use the warhead charge implant. Now, I personally really like the missile implant. I find this to be one of the more interesting ones. Basically, changing the missile damage types can help a lot against some targets. However, it can also be a problem if the target is using reactive hardeners. They can easily counter that. As for the general units, I usually go for maximum possible DPS, but with the ship you can focus on capacitor battery, on afterburner, on Nosferatu efficiency and strength. And this is what I will actually do here. I will go and probably swap some of them out. I even have the shield booster boost unit. Let me quickly go and find. Let me replace one because I don't have any ballistic control on this ship. Don't really need to use the ballistic control if you're a tank build, but extra capacitor battery performance can be nice. And let me go find the afterburner unit to improve the ship's velocity. Okay, now this will use more capacitor, but I have the capacitor battery as well, so it should not be a big problem. And let me see what else I can do here. There is the Nosferatu boost, neutralizer boost. Okay, let me pick that, and that will give me 26% extra strength on the neutralizers, which is going to be very nice. Okay, let me take a look at the capacitor battery. Okay, noticeable. 256% velocity adjustment. Okay, 872 gigajoule per cycle neutralized. every 24 seconds, but shorter range. That should be very, very nice against tackle frigates. Now with the autocannons, the DPS will be slightly higher, 1357.25, and for autocannons you can actually go and use the barrage implant. Now this implant is actually mostly used for PvP. The barrage is not really that good in missions. Basically that's because of the short burst that it does last, basically for 30 or so seconds. 4144.71 DPS on the barrage implant on this ship. You know, that's actually really good. For PvP, I can definitely see the Praxis being used with the large autocannons, especially if you have the barrage implant. You can get some really nasty DPS out of this ship, and this looks very good. But for missions, that DPS will not be sustained, and you will not see a big improvement in clear time. Okay, let me dock and let me swap the weapons into a different weapon system, and of course let me swap into a different implant.
Docking
I will show
request
you basically
accepted.
how the ship looks with most of the weapon systems. 1360.73 DPS with the large pulse lasers. Now the pulse lasers are nice. Overall, one of the more interesting weapons systems in the game. And for lasers you can use the focused crystal. Now the pulse crystal is good, but for that the ship is required to be an armor tank, unless you are prepared to sacrifice shield for the extra capacitor. So the focused crystal is definitely the ideal option for most of the ships that use lasers. And of course the DPS will slowly go up with every new cycle. You can see the implant bar over there goes up by 1% per hit. That used to be 3 or 4% every hit, now it's 1%. Not really sure what's happening here, but the bar is getting filled up slowly. And now at maximum possible performance at 180%, it's 3042.75 DPS, and this is going to be sustained DPS, so you will have this DPS for as long as you don't miss the target. If you miss the target, then this will be reset to 0 and you will lose the DPS. Okay, let me swap to a new weapon system. Time to check out the
Docking
railguns.
request.
Now I think the railguns will give you the highest cold DPS because they have the highest overall alpha damage and solid rate of fire, but they have very short range. And this ship will have extra tracking because of the bonus. For the railguns you can use the high power coil implant. That one will give you plus 75% extra damage. Okay, let me charge up the implant and let's see what's the extra. Let's see how the extra DPS looks on this ship. Okay, implant is enabled, and let's take a look at the active stats. 2492.47, which is not bad. Overall, I would say for a short amount of time you will have really decent DPS, although I noticed that the energy charge did not last long, so definitely you have to use a more DPS focused build in order to get that implant to work. But if you use a more DPS focused build, you will overall have more DPS, but
we're
less
under
stamina.
attack.
Alright, so let's take the Praxis out for a little ride and let's see how it will work. Now, for the first run I will use the focused crystal and I will use the pulse lasers. Now the implant bar is getting filled up rather nicely. Not really sure why it didn't work the first time. You know, there's a chance that this implant will be nerfed in the next patch tomorrow or today, depends when this video gets released. So we will see what will happen. I also forgot to mention that the Praxis has its own special nanocore that will give you a boost on turrets, drones, and I did pick the drone damage bonus because I think that the turrets already have decent DPS, but the drones could need a small damage boost. However, you can pick the other bonus if you like, missiles or turrets. 104% on the implant. Now, if you like to run missions in high sec, you don't really have to use a tank build like this, because the ships here will not do much damage to your ship anyway. But in order to demonstrate how this build works, I will use the tank build. But I think the Praxis is capable to give some really decent DPS. Now, again, the DPS is going to be comparable to the other battleships that we have in the game. It's nothing spectacular. It's there around average.
We're
But
under
since this is
attack.
a free ship, I guess that aspect is, you know, pretty
We're
nice.
under attack.
However, it's nothing spectacular
We're under attack.
so far. The only thing that makes this ship really interesting is its unique appearance. Again, this ship is it's classified as a faction battleship, the same class as the Gnosis and Sunensis, and of course the Praxis one. The shield is slowly going down. Now, I actually thought about improving the shield booster cycle speed. Basically, I had the idea to increase the cycle speed over reducing the capacitor use. But originally, I did imagine this to be a ship that can last a very long time in fight, and in order to last for a very long time, it has to be able to sustain its own capacitor and shield for a very long time. So that's why I picked the extra. That's why I picked to reduce the shield capacitor usage over the extra shield booster cycle speed. Although when I think about it, you can actually get a really good tank if you sacrifice the reduced capacitor use for extra boost, for extra cycle speed, because that way you can recover the shield super quickly, but at the same time your capacitor will take a big impact. And I
Enemy
think
ships detected.
so far this build in that aspect is really
We're
generous
under
on
attack.
the capacitor. Should last for a very long time. The
We're being
resistances
warp scrambled.
they look to be really nice.
We're under attack.
You also have I think the sleeper nanocore on this ship, which might be a better option over the special Praxis core, because the sleeper nanocore can actually give you 30 seconds of improved capacitor regeneration, and for 30 seconds that can help in some cases. I use the sleeper core on the Stabber 2, and honestly I really like it. It's nothing spectacular, but it's interesting. And of course, it can serve as a damage control for 30 seconds, because it will increase your resistances for 50% for 30 seconds, but of course lower DPS and overall other things that do change when you activate that nanocore. Now so far I'm clearing the mission without much of a problem. The implant is working at full speed, 180%. Used to be 200%, although I feel like that will be 150% in the next couple updates. 3000 DPS on this current tanky Praxis. No, I think I can easily get 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 DPS if I go full DPS. And if we take a look at this ship from that perspective, it might actually be not bad. Now, in order to have an accurate opinion on this ship, I will have to go and try out the other tier 9, tier 10 battleships and faction battleships with basically the same build, with the same implant, and then when I compare the results, we can actually get a very decent power scale on how good this ship is. So far, I would say that, like I said before, this ship is average on best. So far, I don't see the Praxis being... I don't see this ship, you know, above the other faction battleships. Now, one thing that I would like to mention for this ship is its insurance cost. It's really expensive. Okay, that was one mission, and let me go and change the implant into the bombard implant. Now, I really like the drone bombs. They are generally very similar to the barrage implant. Both are good for PvP, but in missions they are not really that good because they only deliver good damage at basically one ship. Burst or alpha damage is the thing that the barrage implant and the drone bomb implant have in common. Both have their advantage and disadvantage. The barrage implant is having a very long charging cycle. Basically, you have to wait 30 seconds for one charge to load, while the drone bomb implant is actually fairly quick. Only 60 seconds to fully charge, and you can launch drones when the implant is ready. Then once the cooldown ends, you pull back the drones, load up the bombs again, and you launch them. That's basically how you use the drone bomb implant. Really good for PvP, but not really that good for missions. As for the barrage, well, you unload the barrage on one ship, and during the duration of the whole mission, you have to wait for the barrage to fully charge before it's fully charged and before you can actually use it again. That's one big difference between the barrage implant and the drone bomb implant. Both are good. I would say the barrage is overpowered. I think everyone would agree to that. Barrage is overpowered. The drone bomb implant, well, it's still really strong. It's still, I would say, overpowered, but not to the same level as the barrage implant. From a PvP perspective, for missions, both are not really good. For missions, you are better off using the laser implant or the railgun implant. They have sustained DPS and they are much better for missions. That's why the Apocalypse Striker and That's why the other railgun ships are being used for missions really often. And of course, I almost forgot to mention missiles. Missiles are also good for both PvP and for both missions. And I think one of the only implants that are equally as good for PvP as for PvE are the missile implants. The warhead charge is really fun. I personally really like the warhead charge. I think I did buy one on the live server that I will use for my missile ships. And perhaps I will actually go and buy one more implant for drones. Automatic defense might be very useful. Has to be level 15 though, in order to unlock some of the other stats that you have. Level 15 is, I think, the optimal
Enemy ships
value
detected.
you can have. Basically the ideal
We're under
level.
attack.
Not really needed to
We're
be
under
30
attack.
or above. Level 15 seems to be like the
We're under attack.
golden value. Now, I can definitely see that the clear time will be a little bit slower with the drone bombs, and that's okay. That's what I personally expected. Mostly because the drone bombs don't have a sustained DPS value. But still, drone bombs do have a very nice use if you like to run missions in low sec or null sec. Drone bombs can easily destroy a tackle cruiser, tackle frigate in couple moments, especially if you have the drone damage amplifier with the general units for DPS. The barrage can serve the same purpose, but let's say you already used the barrage implant in the mission, then you will have to wait for a very long time in order for that to recharge, while the drone bombs are charging really quickly here. Okay, let me... my apologies if I sound a little bit slow today. One of my wisdom teeth is hurting like hell, so if I make a pause, that's because of the pain. It's one of those days. It happens. Hopefully it will go away in a couple days, but that's the current situation. So my apologies if I sound a little bit slow today. It's because I am slow. I'm trying not to stress the pain too much, because that pain is, trust me, that hurts like hell. Okay, now back to the Praxis here. I think I already mentioned a couple times that I don't like to use large drones, and on most of my battleships I do use medium drones. That's because the large drones have a big problem at tracking small targets, and that problem is noticeable when you're flying the rattlesnake. The rattlesnake has a bonus only on large drones. Now this ship has a raw bonus on all drones, but a specific bonus on large drones. So this ship is very similar to the rattlesnake in that aspect. However, this ship can use small and medium drones. They should have enough DPS in case you have to chase around a small ship that's orbiting you, in case you have to chase a fast moving interceptor or cruiser, an Ortus for example. If you have medium drones, you can launch them at the Ortus. The Ortus will have to warp away because the Ortus can't really tank a lot of damage. And I like to take the Ortus as a ideal example this of the tackle ship, I guess, because the Ortus is one of the best, if not the best, ships for hunting. Although recently, I would say the Stratius is slowly reaching the
Enemy
level,
ships detected.
the Ortus level, mostly because of the
We're
amount of
under
stabs
attack.
that we have. The Ortus, if built for hunting, will have around 8 points, while the Stratius can have 12, and you can sneak up to the targets and tackle them.
We're under
While the
attack.
Ortus needs to have a good warping, or you have to get lucky to land on the target at a right distance. Now, in missions on this ship, because of the large drone bonus, you should use the large drones mostly. However, in low sec, I would still suggest that you have at least 10 to 15 medium drones and 10 to 15 small drones in the drone bay, because you never know when you have to use them. Don't forget that the large drones are slow and they are not good at chasing around fast ships. The medium drones and small drones are good, so for defense, those drones are good, and you can combine medium drones and small drones with the drone bombs, and they can deliver some really good alpha damage on tackle ships, and of course on small ships. Against battlecruisers, against PvP battlecruisers, you can easily use the large drones, but in case if the battlecruiser is fast, then you can use the medium drones for them. Depends on the situation. Okay, the drone bombs have been loaded in, and now let me relaunch the drones. It might be a little bit annoying to pull back the drones when you have to arm them with the bombs, but I guess that's one balancing factor. If the drone bombs could be remotely loaded, then the drone bombs would be on par with the barrage implant in the level of how broken they can get. So I guess one balancing aspect on the drone bombs is that you have to retract the drones before you can actually use the implant. If you click on the implant while the drones are out, then the bombs will be wasted, and you have to wait for the implant to recharge again. As for the barrage, well, you have to wait a long time for the implant to recharge before you can use it. That's the balancing aspect of the barrage implant. Now, a couple ways on how you can survive bombs and how you can survive the barrage is by using a damage control. Damage control does work wonders against these implants. I have tested it on my own ship, and yes, it does help a lot. So if you are running missions, if your ship is built for PvP, it's time to start using the damage control a lot more often, because the damage control will help you a lot against these implants. And again, it's tested. That's why I use the damage control on most of my ships now. Stratius has the damage control, Stabber has the damage control, Macariel has the damage control, and I think I'm working on one more ship that will have the damage control, just because of these implants. And so far, we have been doing a really nice work. Now, as for the clearing speed with the drone bombs, as you can see, it is taking a while. It's definitely taking a while. And honestly, that's still not as bad as some other ships that I've tested. This ship is, I would guess, slightly faster in terms of clear speed than the Nestor, with the same build. Of course, if you focus your build on DPS, the clear times will be a lot better. So in that aspect, the Praxis can actually be quite solid. Now, of course, other ships can do the same, and for other ships, you don't have to
We're
spend
under attack.
Omega worth 1000 days. So that's, I guess, the difference between these ships. Alright, sorry for the weird cut, we had to make a little break. Okay, now with the... yeah, this is now the missile implant. You can actually pick the damage type that you want to do. Now, I usually use a thermal for shields and explosive or kinetic for armors. The current ships that I'm shooting at have a hole on explosive in armor, and thermal will do a little bit more damage on the shield because I don't have the EM missiles, but this current combination works really well. Now, one thing for the missile implant that also works really well is the fact that you can actually go into the precision mode with the precision missiles, and that will increase, or should I say, it will reduce the explosion radius of the missiles, and that will improve the damage application on your targets. With rapid missiles, that's really good when you have to shoot down the small ships. The application in PvP is also there because now you can actually do some damage to the tackle ships. This is what most of the missile ships are lacking. One ship that will be really strong with the precision missiles is the Typhoon, because the Typhoon already has a phenomenal damage application with the missiles, and this will further improve the Typhoon's performance in that aspect. So I'm very excited to see how the Typhoon will work with the missile implant. I already have one Typhoon that I want to test out, so probably after the Praxis, the Typhoon 2 will be the next ship. And that Typhoon will be built for maximum possible DPS and missile damage application. And I'm honestly excited to see what kind of monster I will create with the Typhoon 2. The Typhoon 2 actually has better damage application than the Barghest. The Barghest has really good paper DPS, the Raven as well, but because they don't have the explosion velocity needed, the application will be lower than the actual DPS that's shown on paper. And that's why the Typhoon 2 is such a amazing ship. Now, so far, I can say that I have fun flying the Praxis 2. It's definitely a unique experience. Now I'm trying to figure out what ship is the Praxis, you know, the closest comparison with another battleship, and there's not many ships that use drones and missiles at the same time, at least with the battleships. We have the Rattlesnake, but I think that the Rattlesnake is, in terms of DPS, I believe the Rattlesnake does a little bit more. However, the Praxis has the advantage of being able to use small and medium drones a lot better than the Rattlesnake. The Rattlesnake is not really good with medium and small drones because it doesn't have any bonus to them. The Dominix, perhaps, but I think the Dominix is basically on the same level as the Praxis in terms of
Enemy
DPS.
ships detected.
However, there is a chance that Praxis
We're
is
under
a little
attack.
bit more tanky than the Dominix. Depends on the build, I guess, but
We're
they're
being
roughly
warp scrambled.
around the same. The Dominix is way cheaper to fly. That's the advantage that the Dominix will have over the Praxis. The Dominix 1 and the Dominix 2 are both very good ships, and I think they don't cost that much. The insurance on this thing costs as much as a Balgorn, around 5.5 billion. 4.5 billion, my apologies. And the Praxis can produce some really nice kill mails. I have shot down 2 of them. Both were really tanky. One was both were not tanky, but both were really expensive. One was 3.2 billion and the other was 3.7 billion. Both were destroyed with the Macarial and both did not have a really solid build. Now, I think one of the reasons why a lot of players think that the Praxis is really a bad ship, it's because of the builds that players use on these things. Now, I'm not saying that this ship is something amazing or something game-changing or, you know, something like that. The Praxis 2 is at best around tier 9, maybe in some cases tier 10 level, in some cases, but it's really nothing, you know, really impressive. I like how this ship looks, and I think that's about it. That's the only thing that I would say makes this ship interesting. It's a Jupiter class battleship. It's something that is rare, I guess. However, its performance is really comparable to the other tier 9 and tier 10 battleships, with a increased insurance price tag, which makes the other tier 9 and tier 10 battleships actually better, because if you lose them you can easily replace them. If this goes boom, then your IP wallet will take a hit. And I think that's also the case with most of these special edition ships. I know the Enforcer is also quite expensive, the Gnosis also quite expensive, and the Sunensis is also quite expensive for their price. Although the Sunensis has its use, can be a good starter exploration ship. It's interesting in that aspect, which will make me talk about the scanner bonus on this ship. Technically, in the one or two players in the game that actually use this ship for exploration, you can use this thing for exploration. Perhaps in the future you can actually use this ship into wormholes or into nihil spaces, stuff like that, because it has a scanner bonus. It's nice to have, but on a battleship, it's a little bit weird. Same situation with the Nestor. However, the Nestor, with its low mass, can actually go and enter wormholes that would usually collapse if you would enter with a different battleship. So the scanner bonus, while it's nice to have, it's definitely weird. So I guess if you like to use a battleship for exploration, then I guess you can use it, but I don't see a lot of players do that. Most of the Praxis battleships that I see nowadays are being used for missions. Some of them are used for PvP. This Praxis is PvP ready. You can use it for PvP if you like. It should last for a very long time. However, losing it might be a problem because of the insurance price tag. That's basically the only thing that... I think that's the only thing that would prevent a lot of players from actually using them, because if they were cheaper than the usual battleship by insurance points, then the Praxis would definitely be used a lot more often. Only if the insurance on this thing was a little bit cheaper, then the Praxis would be a much better ship, because it would actually be cheap and you can make some really nice builds with it. And overall, it's a very unique looking ship. So that would be basically, I think, most of the things that players are curious about the Praxis 2. I will say this though, it's definitely better than the first generation Praxis. If I can recall correctly, the first Praxis a year ago did not have any skill per level bonus. Basically, you got a roll bonus and that was about it. This ship has a skill per level bonus, and you can take advantage of the skills if you have for this ship. You can use basically all weapons on the Praxis. Doesn't matter what implant you have, because the Praxis can support them. These are some of the positive aspects of this ship. The negatives on this ship are its price point, and its performance is roughly around tier 9, barely tier 10 level, or around tier 9, maybe tier 10 in some cases. And that would be what I personally think about this ship. Now, perhaps, because this ship is also classified as a BlackOps, you know, I wasn't aware of that. I did make one BlackOps battleship. The first BlackOps in use is my Macarial, because I have a cloaking device and I actively use that thing for PvP. Basically, I go, shoot down a target, warp away somewhere and cloak for 10 minutes, and well, that's how I use the Macarial. Basically, you know, first generation BlackOps, as I like to call it. It's a very funny build. To some extent, I would call that Macarial, my own Macarial, a cursed build because of the cloaking device, but it works. It surprisingly works. I still have roughly the same DPS with it, so it's hilarious that it works. The only thing that it needs is a tackle, because the cloaking device will affect the lock-on, but besides that, you know, it works really well. Now, I think we are slowly moving towards the time where we will get BlackOps battleships, and I think perhaps I'm making a guess, wild guess here, perhaps in maybe 4 or 5 months time we will have BlackOps battleships. I mean, we already are receiving force auxiliary structures, we are receiving jump freighters. The next logical thing that we will get are BlackOps battleships, bridges, bridge jumping. That will be fun. That will be very fun, especially if you are hunting in deep nullsec. You can just wait somewhere on the bridge, and you have one scout that will go and tackle the target, a carrier for example, and then they open up the silo, they open up the bridge, and then subcapitals jump to the target. That's going to be a really fun experience. I can't wait for it. And it also, by the looks of it, we are probably going to get strategic cruisers very soon. That's something where I'm very excited for. I would love to fly them. Strategic cruisers, I'm all in for that, and will be very fun to have those things added to the game. I already have a lot of ideas that I will do with them, so very excited about that as well. Well then, we are slowly nearing the end of this long video. I just thought to show you how this ship actually performs, and you know, it's nice to get a free ship, although it's kind of funny because you get the ship for 1000 days of accumulated Omega, which you have to pay for, so technically it's not a free ship but more of a gift for buying Omega for so long. And that makes me curious at what's the next. I mean, there is no way that we get a Praxis 3 next year, right? Would be hilarious if we get a Praxis 3. That would be already a little bit weird, but honestly, I can see that happening. A Praxis 3, that will be a scary ship. If the first one was, you know, was weak, the second one was okay, but you know, it's average. The third one might actually, you know, be something scary, and that will be really funny, because if that's the case, then there's a chance that next year we get a really scary looking Praxis 3, but we will see. Perhaps we also get something different, a Marshall or a different Concorde ship, we don't know. But overall, will be interesting to see where this goes. Overall, I'm excited, honestly. I really am. And overall, very excited for the BlackOps ships. I will probably go and fly them, although not really sure, but chance is that I will fly BlackOps Battleship. But I would still fly the the strategic rulers over any battleship. Well then, that was it for the Praxis 2 overall. Yeah, it's okay at best, it's average at best, nothing, nothing game changing, nothing game breaking. It's just a gift battleship that you get for having a lot of days of Omega. And overall, I had fun flying the ship, so we will see what kind of use will the Praxis get in the future. So with that being said, hope that you enjoyed, stay safe, fly safe, and I'll see you next time.